Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Danielle, aka Stitcherista here on YouTube, and today is Sunday, February 25th. I wasn't planning on doing a video today since I just did one yesterday, but I've been kind of just going with the flow with the channel. Like I had said before, I am not going to have like a set day of the week where I do my update video. It's just going to be when I am off or when I have time. And it's much more relaxed that way. I don't feel pressure like, oh, I have to do a video today because I said it was going to be today. So last night, after I finished the video, I did have dinner. I do not recommend doing grilled cheese in the air fryer. It did get really crispy, but the cheese didn't melt like I expected it to. It didn't melt like when you make a grilled cheese in a frying pan. And I still ate it because I had cooked it and didn't want to waste the food, but it was just really odd. And it did not look like the picture in the recipe book that came with the air fryer. So, tried it. I'll just cook it in the frying pan next time. And then I sat down to watch the Tyler Perry movie, Mea Culpa, on Netflix, and I liked it. It was very good. I did not watch Foe because, you know, Bill left the house at 4:30. So by the time I filmed the video, put it up, it was like 5:30-ish. I had dinner. I watched the movie. By the time I sat down and finished the movie, it was like 7:50, so 10 of 8. And I'm like, you know what? It's still early. And I knew he wouldn't be home until like 11 o'clock. Because when they play poker, it's hours. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go back upstairs and I'm going to do some more diamond painting. So that's what I did. This is a voiceover, by the way. You're going to see me diamond painting, but I am sitting here right now in my recliner having some coffee. So I diamond painted for another 2 hours. I got done that row. So I am on the next row in the diamond painting. And what I found with the mesh ruler, like it was off by a little bit. So I really took my time to line it up with the symbols. And this next row of diamonds I lay down are going to be a little bit to the right of the other one. So I hope it's not too noticeable. What I advise you when you use these mesh rollers, really take your time to line it up. It's so very important. So we'll see. I'll see when I lay like the first section down and see what it looks like up against the other section. Even if it looks a little bit different, not a big deal. It is what it is. But I like the symbols matching up in the mesh roller. And someone had left a comment and said they noticed I don't do checkerboarding. You don't have to with the mesh roller. They're going to line up however you lay them down because the mesh roller is what's keeping them lined up. So, yeah, did that. I diamond painted till about 10 of 10, was tired. And I said, okay, I'm at a good stopping point. So I decided to go downstairs, get in my pajamas. I washed my face, brushed my teeth, did all that, and got in bed. And Bill messaged me because I keep the door locked when he's not here, and especially in the evening. So I said, just text me when you're heading home. That way I can unlock the door. And he got home at about 10 of 11. So he came down, we chatted for a few minutes, and then I pretty much went to bed. I turned on the TV and did the sleep timer, but I went to bed. And I tried to find a new book to read. I have 3 books on hold at the library. I'm really, really trying to not purchase books. When I can get them at the library, it seems like such a waste of money to buy them, even for my Kindle, when I can just be patient and wait for them to come in at the library. So the one I really want to read is that Alice Michaelides book, The Fury. But I have 2 other ones. I have The First Lie Wins, which is the Reese Witherspoon book club pick for this month or last month. And then the other one is The Search Party. So like I said, I may be taking a break from reading here because I haven't been able to find a book that I want. So you guys know every Sunday Bill and I go to the grocery store. Today was not an exception. We get up. Oh, Bill lost 3.6 pounds this week. He has lost a little over 30 pounds. He is just ecstatic. Very proud of him. He has done so, so good. Now, remember I told you yesterday that I didn't think I was going to lose weight this week. I stepped on the scale. I was down 0.2. Now, my weigh-in day is tomorrow. So we will see. So we go to the grocery store, and we usually don't see people that we know, even though our town is a pretty small town and a lot of the people we went to high school with still live here. We saw someone who used to be Bill's, who lived in our neighborhood and hung around with us and was actually Bill's next door neighbor. So we sat and talked to her for a good 5 or 10 minutes. And then we ran into her in every aisle in the store. It was good to see her. And it's funny because I recognized her and I said her name and she looked at me. She didn't recognize me. And when I said my name and she saw Bill, she was like, oh my God. She goes, I didn't even recognize you. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Right? It had been a long time since we had seen her. So, I mean, we knew her parents, you know, so we asked about them and we're just talking about her family. And then Bill was talking about us and everything. So it was good to sit there and chat with her for a little bit. I always liked her, and she was in the band with me in high school, and she would have some parties at her house that we would go to. And I mean, like I said, she lived across the street from me. She was actually one of my first friends in the neighborhood. So I've known her for a really long time, and her birthday is literally exactly 1 week before mine. And I always remembered that because we were always in school when it was our birthdays. So we get through the grocery store, and mind you, you know, because I'm intermittent fasting, I usually have coffee first thing in the morning, and I didn't before we left. So we get home, we put away the groceries, and oh, someone yelled at Bill in the grocery store. So we go to Giant, and we get a lot of produce now because we get bananas, apples, vegetables. I got kiwi this week. I usually try to pick one fruit, and I usually eat strawberries because they're lower in carb, but I really wanted kiwi this week, so I got that for myself. And Bill likes apples, and he likes a certain kind. I don't know. I want to say they're Gala apples, Honey Crisps, something like that. Well, the cartons were stacked. So when we go there on Sunday, there's a lot of employees in that section stocking the shelves. Bill lifts up the one carton of apples to see if there are any underneath. And the guy says, sir, there's nothing under those apples. And it was just the way he said it. I looked at Bill and I thought, oh no. And Bill said, okay, you don't have to yell at me. And he goes, sir, I was just letting you know. And I'm like, I was like, let's get your apples and get to the lunch meat counter. I was just like, oh boy, because it takes a lot to make Bill mad. But when he is mad, and he really doesn't like to be disrespected. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a way to say something and a way to say something. And the way that guy said it, immediately I was like on high alert. So, we get through the grocery store and we get home, and we had to go to Costco because we go every couple weeks because we get like our paper towels, toilet paper. We get pre-cooked bacon there. We get fish there. We get stuff in bulk if we can because it is cheaper, like toothpaste and things like that. So we needed a couple things. And so we came right home, unpacked the groceries, went right back out to Costco. Now, Costco, I don't know what was going on. It was as crowded as it is like at Christmas time. There was just people everywhere. And I hadn't had coffee yet. And I was hungry and I was fading. Like, I think Bill could tell. And I said, I just need coffee. So, because it's still, I mean, it's only just noon here. So it's still a little early for me to eat. As soon as I'm done this video, I'm going to be eating. So we get home, got the Costco stuff put away. Bill helped me with all the house chores. He put away the laundry. We made his tea. He emptied the dishwasher. Like, he really helped me out, and I really appreciate that on the weekends. And so I sat down, had my cup of coffee. He was eating something, and he called his friend that he talks to every day. And the friend is like working in his yard on his deck doing something. So Bill's like, do you mind if I go over there? No, it's fine. I mean, we usually, believe it or not, we do our own thing on the weekends unless we have specific plans. And then we come together at dinner time and spend the evening together. Unless, like yesterday, he plays poker. He only does that once a month. So I was like, that's why I said, you know what? I'm going to sit down. I'm going to do a video. I'm going to read some true crime stories. I'm going to do some diamond painting. And yeah. So when I eat, though, I'm already ready. I already know what I'm going to have. Costco has the best tuna in a can that I've ever had. It's by Wild Planet. And I made that yesterday for lunch. And when I make it, I only eat half the can on a sandwich. So I have the other half. I'm going to have that. I think I'm going to have a string cheese and I'm going to have a kiwi. So that's going to be pretty good. And I'm going to have a cup of coffee with creamer that I bought today at the store. So on YouTube, I've been watching like weight loss videos and things like that just to see other people's journeys. And Harper's Bazaar, the magazine, they have a series, a playlist called like What I Eat in a Day. And it's celebrities and they interview them and they show what they eat in a day. I was watching one yesterday and I was watching Mila Kunis. I love her as an actress. She's just fantastic. When she has coffee in the morning, she uses this Silk oat milk creamer that's oatmeal cookie. And I was like, oh, I'll have to try to find that because it's only like, and I only put a tablespoon of creamer in anyway. I want to say it's 15 or 25 calories and 4 carbs. That's fine. So I found it at the grocery store, so I'm going to try that today. So now she uses like a milk frother and froths it up and then pours her coffee in and she loves it. I just mix it in. But that should be pretty good, I think. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to have at lunchtime. And then we are actually having Sloppy Joe, if you've heard of that. Like we bought the manwich sauce in the can and we have ground turkey we've been eating. So we're going to have that for dinner and that's going to be pretty good. Something different. We also like Costco's rotisserie chicken and we had to stand in line to get a rotisserie chicken. It is like gold there. There was none and they were cooking them all and there was a huge line and Bill's like, don't worry, I'll get us one. And when he got it, he held it up and he goes, I got one. And I like busted out laughing. It's crazy how fast the rotisserie chickens go there. And for us, we can have it for 2 dinners. It's enough, you know, but really good. So all of that. And then he probably won't be home for a couple hours. He said he'll try to be home at 4 o'clock. So I got a couple hours to get this video done and do my own thing and get ready for the workday tomorrow. But yeah. Okay, so I'm going to try to read 2 stories. And today's first story is Melanie Eam. And I guess you pronounce it Eam. It's spelled E-A-M. We're going to say that's what it is. So Melanie Eam and James Barry met in the middle of a heated battle, dodging bullets and running for cover, covering each other's backs as they engaged a formidable enemy. The pair were avid gamers, and their love of role-playing games was what initially drew them together. Melanie was 18 then and having trouble with her high school grades. Fortunately for her, James was not only a gaming partner, but a willing and conscientious coach. When it was time to turn off the Xbox and hit the books, he broached no excuses. It was largely due to his influence that Melanie gained her diploma. By then, she had become a regular guest at the Loxahatchee, Florida home that James shared with his mother and stepfather. Often, she stayed the night. Also living at the property at that time was a young man named Jeff Jarzakowski. That's a mouthful. James's best friend since childhood. Like James and Melanie, Jeff was a keen gamer. The trio would spend hours together hunched over their controllers, zapping insurgents and aliens and zombies. It was all great fun until it wasn't. Melanie, as it turned out, had a possessive streak. She was jealous of the friendship between James and Jeff. In fact, she demanded an end to it. She resented her boyfriend paying attention to anyone who wasn't her. Well, that's got trouble written all over that. I've never been like that because, when I was a kid, your hormones, your brain is different, but I've never really competed with anybody for attention. I figure if you want to be with me, you're going to be with me. I've never chased a guy. I've never, been that kind, because why do I want to be with someone who doesn't want to be with me? And why would you try to break up this friendship that has been longer than he's been with you? I think women think they can change men. You can't. Don't try. Okay. And so the real life battle lines were drawn with James caught in the middle. On the one hand, there was Melanie hinting that she might break up with James if she had to play second fiddle. On the other, there was Jeff warning his friend that Melanie had a dark side and that she wasn't to be trusted. James laughed off these warnings, of course. Mel may be a bit overbearing, he chuckled, but she's all right. I just wish the two of you would get along. To Jeff, though, this was no laughing matter. 18 months into James's relationship with Melanie, he decided that he had had enough. To him, his friend's girlfriend was perfectly personified by her gaming handle, Hellraiser. Mel's avatar was also a fair representation of her character in Jeff's estimation. It showed a succubus, is that how you... A succubus, a female demon, with its heart ripped out of its chest and held bleeding in its hand. In any case, Jeff wanted no part of Mel's histrionics. After making his apologies to James's mom and stepfather, he moved out of the residence. Round one in the battle for James's affection had gone to the possessive girlfriend. But if Mel thought that she had banished her rival, she was sorely mistaken. Jeff continued to visit when she wasn't around, something that always sent Mel into a tantrum when she found out. She issued an ultimatum demanding that James make a choice between them. When he refused, she stormed off to bed. It was now that James would discover that Jeff's warnings had not been overblown at all. While he slept that night, Mel slipped out of bed, crept down to the kitchen, and fetched a bottle of bleach. Wow, before I even go on, what the hell is in her head? Right? The contents of this container were poured into James's fish tank? No, ma'am. That's horrible. Condemning its dozens of occupants to an agonizing death. James woke the next morning to find his prized tropical fish floating dead on the surface. He immediately knew who was responsible, and Mel made no attempt to deny culpability. I did it to show you how much I love you, she said. Why would you do that? Were you jealous of the attention he gave fish? Okay. But this supposed show of devotion would backfire badly on Melanie. James wasn't just furious at the loss of his pets, he was deeply concerned by Mel's behavior. Perhaps Jeff had been right after all. Maybe Mel really was unhinged. While his anger over his ruined aquarium was still up, he decided to end the relationship. Mel did not take the news well. You think? That was predictable at the very beginning. Melanie had been James's first serious girlfriend. Now, James was discovering the heartache that always accompanies the end of a love affair. Over the weeks that followed, he moped around the house, showing little interest in anything besides his nightly gaming sessions with Jeff. His friend assured him that he had done the right thing, but James wasn't so sure. He missed Mel terribly and longed to be with her. Gradually, his resolve began to waver. In early November 2017, he eventually gave in to his loneliness. He picked up the phone and asked Mel if he could see her. He was over the moon when she said yes. James's reunion with Mel drew mixed reactions in his immediate circle. His mother and stepfather had always liked the girl, who had never been anything but ultra respectful towards them. Jeff was less pleased, although he kept his opinion to himself. It wasn't his place to tell James who he should be with. Perhaps he had been too harsh on Mel. Maybe he should give her another chance. But while Jeff might have been ready to let bygones be bygones, Mel was not in the mood for such indulgences. No sooner was she back in the picture when she started pressuring James again, insisting that he end his friendship with Jeff. James wasn't going to do that, but he did come up with a compromise. Mel would have her time and Jeff would have his. James would do his best to keep the two of them apart. This uneasy truce was never going to last. Of course not. Of course it wasn't. It would be put to its first and ultimately last test on November 17th, 2017. Jeff and James were in the midst of an online game that evening when, in the midst of the action, another player entered the fray, Hellraiser. This was a clear infraction of the rules the trio had agreed on. In disgust, Jeff threw down his game controller and stalked off to bed. Just weeks after his reunion with Mel, James had been forced to face a harsh reality. He had made a big mistake letting Mel back into his life. Mel hadn't changed. She was still the same obsessive, controlling individual who had driven him away in the first place. No matter how much hurt it might cause in the long run, he realized now that there was no future for them. With Mel still online, he clicked over into chat and started typing. "You'll always be special to me, but this was a mistake. It's over, Mel. I'm sorry. Maybe one day when this is behind us, we can talk it through." Before Mel had a chance to respond and try to convince him otherwise, James logged out. Well, she's not going to take that sitting down. There's no way. About an hour later, just after midnight, James was in bed and unable to fall asleep when there was a knock at the door. He went to answer it and was surprised to find Mel on his doorstep. "You said we could talk about it," she insisted, pushing past him and entering the house, where she stalked off toward the kitchen. "Mel, it's late. Can't we just—" James started to say before Mel cut him off. "Do you love me?" she demanded. "Mel, do you?" she insisted. This was James's moment of truth. The next words out of his mouth would determine how this went. If he backed down now, then the whole thing would start again. The possessiveness, the jealousy, the demands for attention. Faced with that prospect, James made a decision, one that would have catastrophic results. "The truth, Mel, is that I don't love you. I did once, but not anymore. This just isn't working. I hope that you can understand and that we can still be friends." It was the typical let me down easy speech, with the exception that James meant what he was saying. Mel, though, wasn't listening. She was rummaging through a kitchen drawer, and when she turned around, she was holding a 13-inch carving knife. Without saying a word, she swung at him. The first swing nicked James on the wrist, creating a graze that he hardly noticed. The second was deeper, but still barely a nick. "Mel, stop," James begged, warding off the next lunge. "Let's talk about this." But Mel wasn't stopping. Blinded by rage, she continued swinging with the knife, inflicting 6 superficial wounds on her boyfriend's arms as he tried to defend himself. Then suddenly she shifted her grip on the knife handle and thrust the blade rather than arcing it. The move caught James by surprise. Before he could even react, the knife had pierced his skin. Directed upward under the ribcage, it sliced through flesh, inflicting massive damage as it penetrated the left ventricle of the heart. James staggered back, mortally wounded, the heft of the knife still protruding from his chest. Mel, perhaps realizing what she had done, turned and fled. Jeff was sound asleep in bed when he was awakened by a crash and then the sound of someone crying out in pain. I'm guessing he had moved back in because, remember, it said he had moved out. The sight that greeted him as he opened his eyes must have convinced Jeff that he was still asleep, afflicted by a nightmare. James had staggered into the room, clutching his chest and gasping for help. Impossibly, there appeared to be a knife sticking out from his chest, and the blood, so much of the stuff, welling out from between his friend's fingers. Jeff was out of bed in a single movement. He caught James just before he collapsed to the floor. Jeff screamed for help. His cries were answered by Guy Hand, James's stepfather. Guy immediately started CPR, but every breath that he exhaled into his stepson's lungs was gushing out through the ugly wound in James's chest. "Call 911, Guy yelled to his wife. Unfortunately, it was already too late. James Barry was already dead by the time paramedics arrived. That made this a murder, and investigators soon had a suspect to focus on. The problem was that Melanie Eam was gone. She had quit town, destination unknown. It would be 3 days before detectives tracked her to her family home in Silver Spring, Maryland. Taken into custody, Melanie made no pretense at innocence. She admitted stabbing James, saying that she had done so in a fit of rage after he had ended their relationship via a text message. "That set me off," she said. "He could have at least had the decency to do it in person." By the time the matter came to trial, however, Melanie Eam's defense team had concocted a new version of events. They now claimed that it was Guy Hand who had stabbed James. What? According to this narrative, Melanie and Guy had gotten into an argument. James had stepped in to break it up and had been accidentally stabbed in the resulting melee. As unlikely as this scenario seemed, it struck a chord with the jurors. They were unable to reach a unanimous verdict. A mistrial was declared. Oh boy. So if you don't know what a mistrial is, that means the jury can't come to a decision. The judge declares a mistrial, and then it's tried again. So they had to go through all of that again. And so to the second trial beginning in January 2019. This time around, the jury was not convinced by Melanie's tall tale of an altercation that resulted in an accidental stabbing. She was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 50 years in prison. Should she serve her full term, Melanie will be in her 70s by the time she is released. Wow. I mean, that is, I don't want to say a typical story, but people just lose their minds. They can't stand losing people. Okay. The next story, we're going to skip that one because it involves children, and I don't like reading about that. Let's see. Okay, that one involved a child too. No, let me pause here for a second. Oh yeah, we're going to read this one because it's from 1892, and you know I like the old ones. Okay, this is Maria Barbella. The year was 1892, and in New York City, the turnstiles of Ellis Island were clicking out an up-tempo rhythm as they admitted hopeful migrants from the Old World. Italy and Ireland were the most common points of origin that year, with as many as 247,000 settlers incoming from the former country. Wow. Among this throng, the arrival of Michel Barbella, his wife Philomena, and their 24-year-old daughter Maria went mostly unnoticed. The family settled into a tenement apartment in the Mulberry Bend slum, an area of Manhattan's Little Italy. Shortly after, Maria, who spoke no English, found a job as a seamstress at Lewis Grainer and Company, a clothing manufacturer. Maria was a somewhat plain girl, painfully shy and in serious danger of being left on the shelf in the marital stakes. She had never had much attention from men and was therefore surprised when one started paying her attention. His name was Domenico Cataldo, and he ran a shoeshine booth at the corner of Canal and Lafayette Streets. This just happened to be on Maria's route to work. Every day, Cataldo would call out a greeting as she passed, and every day, Maria would blush deeply, duck her head, and rush past. It was weeks before she finally plucked up the courage to respond. After that, she started leaving home a little earlier, giving her time to dawdle a few minutes and chat with her newfound friend. Domenico Cataldo was not a handsome man. He was short and stubby, and at 27, he already had a receding hairline. His face was also badly pockmarked, and his nails were permanently blackened by boot polish. But Cataldo had at least one thing going for him with the ladies. He talked a good game, and to the naive Maria, he seemed charming and sophisticated. He was also from the same region of Italy as her, so there was an instant connection. "I'm looking for the right girl to marry," he told Maria, "and the one that I choose will want for nothing. I already have over $900 saved." I don't know what $900 was in 18 whatever, but it probably was a lot of money. Maria hoped fervently that Cataldo would choose her. She started stopping at his booth on her way home, allowing him to escort her the last few blocks. Excitedly, she told her parents about Domenico, mentioning that he was well off and that he was from the Basilicata region of Italy. Michelle and Filomena were keen to meet the man who had so impressed their daughter, but Cataldo was elusive, always finding some excuse to avoid an introduction. Why? Okay. Eventually, Michelle Barbella began to suspect that he must be hiding something. After yet another dinner invitation was declined, Michelle forbade Maria from ever seeing Cataldo again. Maria was heartbroken by this outcome, but she was a dutiful daughter, and so she accepted her father's ruling. She began walking a different route to work, avoiding Cataldo's shoe shine booth. This worked for a few weeks, but then one day, in March 1895, Maria found Cataldo waiting for her outside the factory gates. The sight of him made Maria's heart leap for joy. She almost replied when he called out his customary greeting, but then she remembered her father's directive and brushed past without responding. It was the same on the second day, and again on the day that followed, and on the one after that. Finally, after 10 days of this charade, Cataldo blocked Maria's path and insisted that she hear him out. The words he spoke were music to her ears. "Maria," he said, "I can't live without you. Will you be my wife?" Maria felt as though her feet were hardly touching the paving stones as she rushed home to tell her parents the good news. Domenico had proposed. Not only that, but he had agreed to meet with them to ask formally for her hand in marriage. That meeting was to take place a few days hence on March 28th. On the day in question, Cataldo asked Maria to meet him at a tavern on Christie Street, about halfway between their respective residences. From there, they'd walk together to meet her parents. Maria, of course, agreed to the arrangement and gladly accepted the soda that Cataldo offered when she arrived at the bar. "Ma'am, no, do not drink something that a guy gives you unless you see the bartender pouring it. Women, don't." Thirsty from her walk, she drank deeply. A few moments later, she began to feel dizzy. Everything swam out of focus. The room appeared to be spinning. Maria Barbella had just been drugged, slipped a Mickey, given a roofie in modern parlance. Now her concerned fiancé escorted her from the bar and suggested that they walk to his room where she could lie down to recover her senses. This, of course, was a ruse. Once there, he tore off Maria's clothes and had his way with her. In her drugged state, Maria was powerless to resist. In fact, she passed out during the ordeal. Oh my good night. Wow. When she awoke, groggy and with a pounding headache, Cataldo sarcastically congratulated her on finally losing her virginity. Overcome with shame, Maria staggered home and told her mother what had happened. Filomena was outraged and immediately set off to find Cataldo. Tracking him to his favorite bar, she gave him a dressing down in front of his friends. "You know the traditions of our people," she insisted. "You were obligated to marry Maria for the sake of her honor." Confronted by an incensed Italian mama, Cataldo wasn't stupid enough to argue. He sulkily agreed to make good on his promise. So he only wanted her for sex? I mean, it wasn't like he courted her, but I don't understand the end game there. Over the days that followed, however, the elusive Lothario was back to his old tricks. He continued to vacillate, refusing to be tied down to a wedding date. Finally, on April 20th, he admitted to Maria that he would never marry her, claiming that he was already wed with a wife and children back in Italy. No, he isn't. Maria was crushed, of course, so he did just want sex. Really? But Filomena wasn't giving up as easily, not when her daughter's honor was at stake. She was convinced that Cataldo was lying to avoid his obligation. On April 26th, she and Maria tracked him down to Mancuso's saloon on East 13th Street. There, Filomena would make one last plea to his better nature. She should have known by now that Cataldo had no such quality. Surrounded by his drinking buddies, Cataldo was in a particularly belligerent mood that day. He laughed in Filomena's face when she asked if he was a man of honor. Then he said that he would marry Maria if her parents paid him a $200 dowry, an impossible sum for poor immigrants. Finally, in exasperation, Filomena stormed off, uttering some choice insults as she did. These seemed only to amuse Cataldo and his friends further. Good Lord. Maria had not spoken a word during this entire encounter, but now she stepped forward, inclined her head towards the man who had raped her, and whispered something in his ear. Cataldo's companions couldn't hear what she said, but they certainly heard Cataldo's response. "Marry you," he chuckled. "Only a pig would marry you." Wow. These were the last words that Domenico Cataldo spoke in this world. As Maria straightened up, the bystanders noticed a flash of silver in her hand. The straight razor was drawn across Cataldo's throat, cutting deep, opening up a gash from ear to ear. The spurt of blood was prodigious, spattering those standing nearby. Cataldo staggered to his feet, his hands flailing at his mutilated neck in a useless effort to stanch the flow of blood. By now, Maria was running for the door. Cataldo lurched out after her, leaving a thick ribbon of blood in his wake. He collapsed in the gutter of East 13th Street, convulsed for half a minute, and then lay still. Arrested and charged with murder, Maria Barbella was held at the New York prison, aka the Tombs, remaining there until her trial in July 1895. She was represented by two novice attorneys, Amos Evans and Henry Sedgwick, and adjudicated by an all-male jury. Oh, that's not going to be good. The judge, John W. Goff, was openly antagonistic towards her, explicitly instructing the jurors that they were not to go easy on the accused just because she was a woman. With all of these factors taken into account, it was hardly surprising when Maria was found guilty as charged. Judge Goff sounded almost gleeful as he passed sentence of death by electrocution. After sentencing, Maria Barbella was transported to Sing Sing prison to await her date with the executioner. As things stood, she would be the first woman to be put to death by this method. But the case had attracted widespread publicity and much support for Maria among the general populace. Governor Levi P. Morton was inundated with letters begging him to intervene. One particularly prominent supporter of Maria Barbella was Cora Slocum, an American who had married an Italian count and was now titled Countess Savorgnan. The noblewoman traveled back to the United States to take up the fight for Maria, and it was largely due to her efforts that an appeal was granted. Maria Barbella's second trial was considerably longer than the first, with much of the testimony focused on the accused state of mind. Evidence was presented by the defense claiming that Maria suffered from epilepsy and had committed the murder while in the grip of an epileptic fugue. Really? This state of affairs was brought about by Cataldo's ill treatment, her attorney claimed. The jury was urged to find her not guilty, and it duly obliged, acquitting her of all charges. Reprieved from death row, Maria Barbella would eventually get her wish of a husband and family when she married an Italian immigrant named Francesco Bruno in November 1897 and had a son by him. Unfortunately, the marriage did not last. A 1902 census places Maria back in the cramped Mulberry Bend apartment, living with her parents, From that point on, there is no further record of her life. I love those old stories, though, because it is done so very differently. The world was just a completely different place all those years ago. So I hope you enjoyed those two stories and seeing me do some more diamond painting on Twilight Rose. I hope you all are having a good Sunday. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.